Well, I want to thank you, everybody, for joining today in this meeting. We are having contest and judges training. Welcome to contest season. We're doing a little bit different, something different this year. We're doing tall tales instead of humorous. Tall tales is a little bit shorter, but should be just as funny. And we're doing it all online this year. And our famous Jeri Steele will be training us a little bit on contest training, online contest training, and judges training. This is being recorded, and this will be on the D63 website after the recording ends. Thank you very much, everybody. And without further ado, I am going to pass the lectern over to Jeri. Jeri?
So just to give you a brief background about mine, I've been a Toastmaster since 1985, and in North Texas, where I did most of the judging before I got here to District 63, we had formal contest training, and I've always wanted to see this district do that, and so this is part of that cultivation of doing that. I've probably been judging hundreds of contests, everything all the way up through region. And it is difficult at times to see some of the contests run if they're not run efficiently. So we're going to talk about that today and talk about all the roles and what's going on. There we go. So what I'm going to cover is quality contests and the contest roles, and then planning and running the contest, and then being a judge and the judge's ballots and criteria, and a little bit about online platform. So the way to get a quality contest is to actually read all the rules and to think about what is the purpose of the contest and keep that in mind. The rule book starts with speech contests are an important part of Toastmasters' educational program, and they provide an opportunity for Toastmasters to gain speaking experience, as well as an opportunity for other Toastmasters to learn by observing proficient speakers. And this is really important in like my area up here where I am in Bowling Green in north part of Nashville. The clubs are small, and so they don't get exposure to a lot of other speakers. So there is a new contest rule book, so make sure that you have the rule book that is dated July 1st through 2021 and June 30th, 2022. But you also can Google it on the Toastmaster International site. The rules do change yearly. There is a little diamond shape in the left column to show where things have been updated. For instance, the wording on the eligibility at all levels was changed a little bit about making sure your dues were paid. There was some changing of the wording on eligibility so that educational presenters at conferences are not eligible to compete. So you might want to go look at the changes, even if you haven't, if you are familiar with current with contest rules, because those might change just a little bit. A contestant definitely cannot be a voting judge, a tie-breaking judge, or a chief judge at any contest of the same type. And so that they won't be competing at the same level or in any district. Because when I first started Toastmasters, we had people judging contests if they were in another district, even though they're contestants. Some people were contestants in other areas, and it just evolved over time that they finally made it officially against the rules to do that. Here we go. So the fall contest this time will be tall tales, and the timing will be 3 to 5 minutes, plus or minus 30 seconds. That means to be eligible to be voted on, you have to speak at a minimum of 2 minutes, 30 seconds, and a maximum of 5 minutes, 30 seconds. It must be an original story with original content. So you can't just adapt a children's storybook or a nursery rhyme or something like that in order to qualify for tall tales. Any member who is a paid member in good standing can participate, but they cannot be one of the district officers or somebody running for office. Humor and props can be used and even suggested to illustrate the story. Some of the funniest tall tales I've seen had some props or like a hat or something to encourage us to think about what was going on in the tall tale. The evaluation contest is the second contest, and the time is 2 to 3 minutes, plus or minus 30 seconds. And that means you have to speak at a minimum of 1 minute 30 seconds and a maximum of 3 minutes 30 seconds. Any member can participate who's in good standing. And the way this works, if you haven't seen an evaluation contest, is a 5 to 7 minute test speech is given. So it's like a standard Toastmasters speech. And at the end of the test speech, the contestants are given 5 minutes to prepare their notes. And then the contestants are brought back into the room one by one, so they don't get to hear each other's evaluation. So there's the link to a tutorial on speech contests. And these are video tutorials that are excellent on the website. I will be covering similar material, but it does go further in depth. Especially, and I'll mention it again when I get to the judges part, especially the judges guide and the ballot if you're going to judge. So begin by reading the rules, and then there is also a best practices for conducting online contests that's at the international website. This is the third link. So this is a culmination of online practices that Toastmasters International put out after we all had to revert to going to Zoom because of COVID. So first, let's talk about contestants. You have to be in good standing by paying your dues at your club contest. And where this really comes into play is our first contests are usually here in September, and then the division contests are like in October. And if the club has not paid their dues besides the person, then that person is ineligible to compete. And I have seen some contestants have to drop out because their club secretary did not get their dues paid on time. So if you're going to be a contestant, make sure your club pays your dues on time. If a club contest is held, it must be in compliance with the rules of this book, of this rule book. So if you're going to hold a club contest and you're not familiar with how to do that and you need help, be sure and contact somebody, your area governor, your area director, Kristen, the VP of Education, or somebody to help you with that. You can always bring in outside people to help run your contest. And the result of that contest is final. Now, if you do not have a club contest, the club president can appoint somebody to be the contestant for your club if you only have one person that wants to compete. And like all of the contests, the humorous and evaluation contest will proceed from the area to the division and the district. But that's the highest level for any time we conduct the humorous speech contest and the evaluation contest. The international speech contest is the only one that proceeds to quarterfinals and semifinals and the World Championship of Public Speaking. Some of the other rules: contestants must have, as I said, paid their current dues, and the club must have paid their dues. Contestants will remove any name badges or any designation of Toastmaster rank. This means also, if we're speaking on Zoom, that anything behind them in the room where they are speaking from needs to not have Toastmaster ribbons or plaques or anything that might give away their Toastmaster rank in behind them or on to the side that judges can see. Contestants are always introduced just by name and title, and then the title and then the name. The table topics contestants, you do the name, you recite the question, You recite the question the second time and then the name. Every participant in the World Championship of Public Speaking must present an entirely new and different speech than the one they presented during that year's semifinal speech and any previous semifinal or final round speech contest. We used to see the same contest speech over and over again, and it's fine at the local level and at the area, the division, and the district, but it's not once you get into that semifinal. That person needs to have at least 2 speeches available and ready and prepared to go on stage with it. So the contest roles, is all the helpers. They're at least in an area. There's at least 5 voting judges and a tiebreaker judge. In the division, there'll be 7 judges. In the district, there's 7. I think there were 7. And then region is 9. Be sure and check the rule book for it. And judges cannot be a member of a club in which their contestant is a member. So, for instance, in a small area, we had to juggle. We had to juggle judges. We put a judge in to judge one area contest, and when we had multiple areas, and other judges for another one, because those judges could not be judged the contest where somebody was a member. International, it's 14 judges. The contest chair, there are scripts available, and I'm sure if they're not on the district website, we can get some located for you. So if you've never been, it's basically the Toastmaster of the area contest or the division contest. And so it's not any more difficult than being the Toastmaster at your local club, especially with the script that we have, so that you can make sure that you do it according to rules. Other contest helpers are the chief judge that oversee all of the judges and the rules of the contest. There'll be 2 ballot counters and 2 timers, and there'll be as many sergeant-at-arms as needed. If you're in a room that has 2 entrances and exits, and then you also need a sergeant-at-arms to escort the evaluators to another room and sit with them there, then you need 3 sergeant-at-arms. So use how many ever you need to have. You will need a sergeant-at-arms extra for the evaluation contest and any times you run table topics contest, because those contestants have to be escorted out of the room. As at the club contest, all of these helpers are needed unless it's impractical, and that's the way the rule book is worded. So you may not have enough members to have a separate ballot counter and a timer besides judges. And some clubs will have all of their members be judges, and other clubs bring in guest judges. So that's up to you how you run that club contest. In the rule book, it says the contest chair is supposed to be in charge of the room arrangements. And in online contests, that also means that you're in charge basically of the Zoom arrangements. That does not mean you need to be the Zoom master or the Zoom monitor, whatever title you want to give that person. And it doesn't mean you may be the one scheduling the meeting. A lot of times the area director will be involved in a lot of these, but it does mean as contest chair, you want to make sure that all of those things were handled. And in conjunction with the chief judge, you're going to have to decide how to do pre-briefing meetings. And we will talk about that when we talk about online meetings. The pre-briefing meetings might be to test sound, video, and show contestants about their speaking area. So at the pre-contest brief, the contest chair verifies who's present. So if all the contestants are present for all the contests, their name pronunciation and their speech title. Sometimes people get real clever about their speech titles, and so the contest chair will have to read them and make sure that you can pronounce and say it the way the contestant wants it said, because sometimes they want a particular word emphasized a little bit differently, or a phrase paused after a phrase before they get to the next part of the speech titles. So work with the contestant on that. You'll be drawing for speaking positions, and then you need to review any rules as necessary, such as by outlining exactly where the speaking area is if you're in person, what the timings are, and that no badges are on and no awards hanging on the wall. So make sure that every contestant understands all of those rules. You also want to get that person to test any equipment that they have. A lot of people that do not have computers to run their Zoom meetings from have been using their phones, and they don't realize that it's probably better to turn the iPhone sideways so that it's horizontal. They have more room for gestures, and so they need to test that equipment so they understand the scope of what that camera is seeing when they are competing, and the location of the timing lights if you're in a physical room, or how to pin the timer if you're on a Zoom meeting. There are a lot of people that they've attended a Zoom meeting, but they've never played with the logistics, and so they don't know how to pin a speaker or a timer, in this case the timer, so that you can always see that person on the screen. And the contest master is going to introduce the chief judge and remind all of the contestants rules for protesting. So for instance, we want to make sure the contestant understands and knows who the chief judge is, for instance, and how they report any protests that they want to have. So in the planning of the contest, as the contest chair or the chief judge, you're going to be making sure that you get those certificates of eligibility via email prior to the briefing. It makes it a whole lot easier to do the briefing and make sure they run on time if you get them via email, even if you're physically in person. Otherwise, you're sitting there shuffling lots of papers, and people show up at the last minute, and then you have to delay the contest because you haven't got all the signed forms. And so just do it ahead of time in email if possible. You want to go over for the contestants the logistics of what will happen in the table topic contest and the evaluation contest and you need to decide in that pre-briefing that you're having online whether or not everybody's going to remain, the contestants are going to remain in the main room, and then the whole audience and everything else gets moved to the breakout room, or if you leave everybody in the main room and move the contestants only to a breakout room. So all that needs to be worked out ahead of time. And the contestants need to understand that. They want to definitely test their microphone. A lot of people do not realize how bad their microphone is on their computer. It echoes, or they have, by giving them a chance to test it, the contestants all have a fair and equal chance to get all of their equipment working correctly. And you want to make sure that the speaking area is defined. Usually that means 3 to 5 feet away from the camera. That way you can see from the waist up. Then also discuss any other logistics of the meeting that you need to have for. We are asking the contest chair to make sure before every contestant to ask the contestant when they come up and get ready to, or they're getting ready to speak, is your microphone on and are you ready? Now, the reason for that is that also gives the contestant the chance to say yes, and then you can see if they're muted or not. So this is a double check to make sure that their mute is off and that their microphone is working properly. Now, the chief judge will coordinate getting judges. Now, the area director has helped to do that a lot. I haven't seen it here where the chief judge goes and gets all the judges, but it's usually between the two of you working out to get who judges. So it takes a lot to find all the right judges, people that are qualified and don't have a contestant in the same contest. You will run the pre-contest briefing for judges and helpers, which means that you need to go over the timing for the helpers and the timers, how they're going to report the results to the contest chair or the chief judge so that you get the timing results, and that the judges need to give their ballot. And you also supervise the ballot counting, and then deliver the winner's name to the contest chair, because you are the final double check to make sure that the first, second, and third place has been written down properly. And I highly recommend that you write it out. The third place winner for today is, the second place winner today is, and this will be the person representing the area if the winner is not available. Because I have seen contests where somebody just wrote down 3 names and they announced them in the wrong order. Now, if that happens, the chief judge needs to stop it and have the contest chair re-announce it in the proper order. So you have to make sure that that first, second, and third place is correct. And so this is a checklist that you can use to run that briefing. The certificates of eligibility have to be verified. The contest chair has to have the agenda with all the timing on it, so that the timers know the correct time, or you give the timer a separate sheet so that they have the times in front of them. And make sure that the sergeant at arms, the timers, and the vote counters have their role in front of their name. The judges will only have a judge number, and this will help the chief judge to make sure that all the judges are online and present when they need to be. But they will rename themselves, instead of a personal name on Zoom, to judge number 1, judge number 2, judge number 3. And take your photo off of your online account if you're going to be a judge, and discuss all of the logistics of the meeting with the judges. I also made sure that the cell phone number of all the contest chair, the chief judge, the area director, or the division director, whoever's running, whoever this contest is for, and all the judges and all the assistants all have the cell phone number in case you need to text and if there's issues. In the judges briefing, you will review ballots if needed. You definitely want to talk about how the ballots will be handled. The judges absolutely need to sign their form and put the names in there. And then if they take a photo and text it to the chief judge, that's fine. And however else they're going to do their vote counting, but always the chief judge should have should have an image of their ballots with their signature on it to make sure that it's been handled properly in case there's questions. And deal with the certificates of eligibility if they weren't sent beforehand. You also need to talk to the judges about how protests will be handled. I do see people forgetting to do that. You want to make sure that the judges understand that they are one of the people that can protest, and you want to make sure they understand who to protest to, the contest chair or the chief judge. So now we can talk about the actual running of the contest. The contest agenda has a brief start, like the pledge, the remarks, introduction, any introductions. Just make sure the introductions are not introducing anybody who is a contestant. As for instance, you cannot say this person's a past area director, something like that in the introductions that is a contestant. So just make sure that's not happening. That there are some brief rules to be reviewed about no entering and leaving the room when you're physically in a room. The contest chair needs to announce the speaking order and do it slowly or repeat it so that the judges can write it on their notes and their ballot. You also have to make the announcement there is no photography, no screen printing of any of the contestants unless the contestant has asked to record themselves. Now, we've had area contestants ask to record themselves. In case they win, they will be able to submit it for the semifinals. So that's the only, and you can use it to improve their speaking later on, but they have to record themselves. When you're introducing the speakers, the name, the title of the speech and name is the standard introduction. After the people speak, you announce that there'll be a minute of silence between speakers. If it's the end of the contest in the area or the division, you wait unlimited time until the chief judge says they have received their ballots from all of the judges. And the reason for this silence is the judges are trying to total things. You need to not make it any more confusing than possible. Plus, people will end up making comments, and you do not want them making comments that might influence the judge. The chief judge is also going to be collecting the time record sheet so that they can see if anybody's been disqualified. Now, after the speeches are given, the contest chair will interview the contestants. But remember, if you have multiple contests, only to interview the contestants that will not appear in another contest, so that they don't get to talk about what area, club, division, their rank in Toastmasters, any of that. So the suggested interview is get them to introduce their club, their area, the division, the district, whatever they're representing, how long they've been in Toastmasters. If you're physically in the room, give them a certificate of participation, and then do a brief interview. And that means ask 2 to 3 questions. Judge, when they give the answers, how long, whether to ask the second question or the third question. And if needed, you can repeat questions to everybody that's standing on the stage in case you need to pad for time while the results are being tabulated. That's something that you will work out ahead of time with the area director or the division director as to when they want to announce the results, because some people hold it and they do all the results at the end. Other people will want to announce the results at the end of every contest. So before announcing the winners, the chief judge should tell you if there were any disqualifications. And as part of that announcement, I always put, there were no disqualifications for time, or there was a disqualification for time. You do not say how many, you do not name the contestant. Now, some people may get the idea, may understand that one contestant has gone over time, but you need to make sure you get that official word from the timers. Contestants with 4 or fewer participants is only going to announce first and second place. If you've got over 5 contestants, you can do a first, second, and third place. And this comes out of the rule book. So let's talk about if you're a judge. As a judge, the results are never to be discussed with anybody. If a contestant asks, and I've had a number of contestants walk up and ask, let them know that you cannot give them suggestions for improvement and that they should have had another member do that. Sometimes in the pre-briefing, I mention that to contestants if I'm the contest chair. If they want feedback on their speech, get some other member of the audience to do it. As a judge, you do not want to consider the club, area, division, or district this person is in. Do not consider age, sex, race, creed, national origin, or profession. Be a good listener. That means paying attention during that speech. For some reason or another, we all tend to have this first and the last speaker seems to have slight advantage. So if you're a judge, make sure you're judging against contest criteria and not a previous speaker, and then you'll be more fair about that. If you can't do these things, don't be a judge. And I've had some people that I've known along the way. Now, as we've gotten more strict about this, they haven't, then you can't be a judge. Some of the barriers to objectivity, people tend to be the champion for the underdog. If somebody's given an inspirational speech and they overcame a lot of adversity, person has disabilities, then you want to pull for them. You want to encourage them, but make sure that that's not involved in your judging of a speaker. And that you're rating the speaker only on content and deliver. And when you're rating them, and I'll show you in the speaker that when you're giving them points on delivery, that you haven't failed to consider content, and then downgrading overall points for grammar error or accent. So when we look at the ballot, you'll see how you can account for that, but that you don't want to be just taking points off overall just because you think somebody's great in their delivery. And then don't be, there are going to be some repeat contestants, and there are going to be some people that repeat content or even a whole speech. And you may feel like it's that person's turn to win because they've done this about 3 times. Try not to let that influence you on how you judge the speaker's performance. So I recommend you go see the judging video at Toastmasters International. It's in that. One of the suggestions that they make, and I've seen done quite a bit, is that you write the names, if you're the judge, on the judge's ballot from right to left. And then as you finish writing all your points, you fold the ballot underneath. So that way you cannot see that you ranked the previous person a 6 and you want to judge the points for this person. You are judging against a contest norm. You're judging against the rules of the content, the content, the delivery, exactly what you're looking for. Another hint that I used, and we used in North Texas, was you took in your pencil or your pen and heavily marked the middle line. The 2 things to the left are the very good and excellent, and the 2 columns to the right are good and fair. And use that line to remind you that is the average. That is what you would expect at a contest of that level. And that gives you some room to move the points around when somebody does an exceptional job or doesn't do quite as well. A little bit about the ballot itself. Toastmasters International has decided the weighting of the ballot content is 50% of the score. So if you write in your points for speech development, which is the structure, the open and bottom, inclusion, did they organize the material right? Effectiveness, did they achieve the purpose that they seem to want to achieve? Was the audience receptive to it? Was there interest in your speech? And then the speech value. Was it logical? Was it an original thought? And these are the points that you assign. So 20 for completely perfect would be 20, 15, and 15. That's 50%. I have seen people comment after like a district contest in the audience say, I don't know why that person won. So-and-so did a better job delivering. Well, they didn't think about that the content might actually have been judged better for the other person than the delivery. Now, on delivery, you have 30%. So that is your physical, the body language. Did they stay in the speaking area? The voice is another 10 points, which is flexibility and volume. Did they vary the variation of their voice so that they had some emphasis on some areas and then quietness in other? The manner, how assured was this person? How confident were they? Enthusiastic. That's the manner of the delivery. So there's that 30%. And that leaves 20% for speech appropriateness and correctness. Then appropriateness means, is it appropriate for this audience? Is the person giving a humorous speech, and did they deliver a speech that was very serious? Did the person for the International Speech Contest give a training speech rather than some other general Toastmaster speech? So the purpose, did it achieve the purpose it was supposed to? And then there's only 10 points for grammar, pronunciation, and word selection. And the reason for this is that you think about it, we are an international organization. We do not want to rank down somebody just because they have an accent. they need to learn to be able to pronounce their words and give us enough time to understand them, even though they have an accent. But you don't want to downgrade them just because they have a different accent than the accent of your local area. And so definitely want to make sure that the 10% for appropriateness and 10% for correctness. And see, that would rule out, when I first started judging, I knew some people who somebody used a cuss word, and it was on, it was a minor cuss word too in a speech. And this person was very offended about it and ended up downgrading them considerably. And they even talked about it afterwards. So that's the kind of people that you don't want to have judging, and you want to make sure your judges don't do something like that. Now, if you do have to have a disqualification, the protest must be given to the chief judge or the contest chair before the winners are announced. You can't do this after the fact. The only disqualifications now are eligibility, so the person didn't pay their dues, timing, and that comes off of the timing sheet, not from one of the participants protesting on timing. It has to be off of the timer sheet to the chief judge. And the speech must be substantially original. So let's talk about that substantially original. The rules say 25% or less of the speech devoted to quoting or paraphrasing another person's content. Now, that doesn't mean that someone can't give the same material that they wrote for several contests. We had somebody question that at one of the contests this last year. And because the person gave some material at a previous contest and then they did it again, but it was their original material. They are perfectly okay to do that. But if they're going to quote Zig Ziglar or somebody else like that, or even paraphrase an idea that another person has presented before, they need to identify the person, or if it's a quote, definitely say and then quote the material. Or, so the quote or the paraphrasing has to be less than 25%. This is subjective. 25% means you've got to figure out whether or not how long they've spoken about that topic. But we also want to give the speakers a chance. So this is how you handle a protest. The judges will be put in a room, or on Zoom, they'll be put into a breakout room. They'll be told the basis of the protest. There'll be any discussion or questions or answers from the chief judge, so that the chief judge can remind them, of the 25% rule. Then the contestants are given an opportunity to come into that room and respond to the judges. So you have to give the contestant a chance to say, oh, I timed it and it's not more than 25%. The contestant will then leave, and then a vote's held. So the judges then will vote, and the majority rules. If they're disqualified, you notify the contestant before you announce the results to the rest of the room. Now, if this happens, it's going to seem like the contest will stretch forever, because this has to be handled properly. And so the contest chair might call a break or do something. So you have to be prepared just in case that happens. Now, I've not seen a protest since they changed the rules to say that you can only protest for somebody's, whether or not they've paid their dues, and whether or not whether or not it's original. There was a protest at a contest where I was a judge, when an evaluation contestant came back into the room and they were given the notes from another contestant rather than their notes. Because once you do an evaluation contestant and their 5 minutes is up, you gather up all of their notes and then you hand it back to them as they come back in the room. But even at that time, we felt like it wasn't important enough to overturn the contest result. So it's up to the judges to make a decision, and that's the originality is pretty much the only reason for doing that. So we're going to briefly talk about Zoom as an online platform. There's always the risk of technical issues. You want to do as much mitigation as possible. I'm a project manager, and we do mitigation of all kinds of risks. And the way we do it is redundancy and planning. The contest chair and the chief judge really need to have text-capable phones. And that way that if something's happening and it's also in the middle of something, you can text back and forth. You need to have some kind of connection backup. Today, I have both a phone that's capable of a hotspot besides my regular internet in case something happened. I even had a contestant who had a power failure. They showed up for the briefing long enough to let us know that's what was going on. They went to their office so that they physically could be at their office when they did their competing. But they let us know that's what was happening. So you have to have a connection backup. And the audio quality, I highly recommend. I'm using earphones and the Bluetooth earphones. And the reason is that also moves the microphone up closer to my mouth. And so the microphone is much better on some of these headsets than it is off of the computer itself. Then also, you want to turn off video except for the contestant. And we need to remember to ask everybody in the audience to turn off their video. And it saves bandwidth, and it keeps that funky thing from happening that when the bandwidth gets bad and the person can't quite talk or they freeze. So that helps. Plus, by turning the video off, as your Zoom master, you make sure that the video is off for anybody that's joining. We had somebody that came into a contest late, and the video came on, and they popped up over the top of a contestant. And so that's a distraction to the speaker that we don't, and it's not fair to all of the speakers that way. So definitely try to keep the video off so that they don't pop up over the top of a contestant when they're talking. Now, some people like to turn chat off so that it keeps people from commenting on, oh, that's a fantastic speech. You don't want to do that in chat so that it doesn't influence a judge. But if you turn chat off, you've got to remember to turn it back on. And if you turn chat off, it means that the chief judge and the contest chair and other people can't talk privately. So you need to talk about that ahead of time if you decide to do that. And always remember to turn it back on afterwards. Using your iPad or iPhone, turn the screen horizontal so that you have more room in the area for somebody to be seen. Make sure that the contestants understand when they are actually getting out of the speaking area so that their arms are chopped off or their head is chopped off. And then be sure that they understand the movement between official contest area where they'll be speaking and a breakout room in case they're the evaluation contestants or the table topics contestants. For timer, you can use a virtual background for Zoom, and I've even seen some people have the virtual background that actually have the timing in it. But you've got to remember to tell your contestants to pin the timer, and you've got to tell people to cover their camera to show only the background. What that does by covering the little pinhole camera at the top of your computer, it just shows the visual background for Zoom, and that way they don't have a person on top of the color. And be sure and ask to pin the timer for the speakers. Some of this is redundant, so turning off the video help with bandwidth. Asking the contestant the question, have you muted your microphone and are you ready to proceed? Having a separate Zoom master instead of just the chief judge or the contest chair. Have a backup for all roles. Have an extra judge if you can at all, because there are family emergencies and technology issues. Then make that decision about turning chat on and off and how you're going to use the breakout room. So I'm going to open the floor. Are there any questions, discussion?
I have a question, Jeri, on areas that have 4 or fewer clubs. How many contestants can they send to the division? And then the same thing with the division to district.
That's a good question. How many people can be sent to the area or the division? That is should be established by the district. And if clubs could send a first and second place both, and the area could send first and second place to the division. But from what I understand, and I believe it was in the rule book, we'll have to go look at that exactly, but that's up to the district to say that at the beginning of the contest season. It's not just optional. So does that meet with what you thought?
Yes, I believe so. I think that if an area has got fewer than so many clubs, they can send two per area, I think, to the division contest.
Yeah. So yes, they can. There are in District 50, when they do judges training, one of the things that they do, because they run it a lot longer than just this 1 hour, is to actually get 3 contestants videotapes or online from Zoom or something like that spin it like an international level, and then have everybody judge it. And then you discuss your judges ballot so that you have some feeling for how everybody judges. And the interesting thing is one person may give a person a 75 and another person a 92, but when it came out to the first, second, and third, it still had a consensus. And then at the district level or above, it's highly usual that judges are going to have a different ranking. So for instance, I consider myself doing a good job if I have picked the right first, second, and third place person. It may not be in that order. And when you've got a very, very, very competitive contest, it's not unusual for those rankings to be different between different judges. And it just depends on the majority. Each first place winner gets 3 points, the second place winner gets 2 points, and the third place winner gets 1 point. And so it's the overall number of points as to who determines the actual first, second, and third. But in that judges training, by doing that, you get some practice that you've seen 3 super excellent speakers. How do you decide which one is first, second, and third? And that's part of your job as a judge. You have to decide first, second, and third.
Okay, I have another question. I just wanted to confirm this with you. When choosing judges for an area contest, you can have judges from either a different area, or if you have a judge from, let's say, one Toastmasters club in that area, you have to have judges from each of the Toastmasters clubs to make that judging fair. Is that correct?
Yes. However, in practice, that sometimes can't be accomplished. And I don't remember exactly the wording in the rule book, but that's the kind of balance that you want. You want to, and especially at the district level, you want to have the same number of judges from each one of the areas, which is why that at a district level there are that many, quite a large number of judges. The same way when they run international, they're running, they're getting judges from all over the world when they go to the international speech contest. I believe it says, and we can go look at that specifically, and I'll send you an email on it, but that I mean, in an emergency, you just have to go with what you got. As long as the judge isn't a club a member of the same club as the contestant. And we had to rotate judges one area because of that. And so that person that was the member at the same club could not judge that candidate, you know, in that particular area. And it was a combined area contest. So they could judge the other areas, but not that area.
Well, thank you very, very, very much, Jeri. This has been an amazing training because you went over pretty much everything that I could have even thought of with judging and with contests